So, welcome back to a rare edition of 20-Minute Topics, which some of you will know is a format that Timothy Roberts and myself did on my Patreon and on YouTube and podcast providers, where it's basically like it sounds. One of us proposes a topic, and then we have 20 minutes to discuss it. What we did previously was a 5-minute teaser, but this is something you and I, Tim, have talked about anyway, and I figured it would be good for the format. Partly. First of all, hello and thanks for agreeing and thanks for joining me. I'm sure pretty much everyone watching will know who you are. The reason I wanted to introduce this topic, which I'll get to in a second, and you know what it is because I teach cymbal making. You do a lot of content about cymbal making, teaching and revealing and filling in gaps and just helping people understand as well, partly from a maker's point of view and partly from a consumer's point of view. And just a nerd's point of view, I guess, if that's a fair assessment.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Cool. So being a teacher of cymbal making, I'm a bit, I have people come to me and I go to them and I do online lessons, as you and I have done. And what I get asked fairly regularly, aside from actually making the things, is about the business side. So the idea of actually setting up shop, as it were, and having social media, how to price the things, how to pitch, how to sort of stick your head above the noise, even if I think people are very often aren't aware that there is a noise in a way. So I came to you with the idea. We both have a business. We have our own separate businesses, and they're very different, I'd say. To give you a quick thing about my business, I never really meant to make a business. I started tinkering, I guess, about 15 years ago, and then just figuring it out because I'm that way inclined and just started learning how to manipulate metal. And people then started going, oh, there's a cymbal maker in Bristol. And suddenly I'd be selling what I made and people would be asking for help. And a business came from that. And for the record, I'm incredibly grateful for what's happened. I'm aware of my privilege in that. Plus, I've worked very, very hard to get here. Do you want to, in a similar vein, before we get cracking proper, just give maybe a brief rundown in the same kind of way about what you do and how you got there?
Yeah. The short version of, first off, thanks for having me. It's always a
Of
great
course. Yeah.
chat. It's good to anytime you reach out and you're like, hey, let's do a video. I'm like, I don't even care what it's about. Let's go.
Yeah,
Because
I appreciate it.
I find myself getting inspired and it kind of helps like recenter me,
Cool.
refocus me on the goal. Because as we will discuss, the business side of things can be it's not as glamorous as it might seem from the outside.
True.
But the short version is that I was a player first. I was trying to make a living as a professional musician, full-time musician. I did it for a very short amount of time, and I got to travel, tour, do a lot of recording sessions. It was a blast, but I learned fairly quickly that on the gigging side, the idea of being a full-time musician doesn't really exist. Like musicians
Mm,
that call themselves full-time are really doing like five jobs or maybe even more than that to
yeah,
kind of
right.
cobble together a living.
Yeah.
And so I actually got fired from a really good gig that I had, and had to figure out what was I going to do with my life because I'd been touring and it was out of the scene, the local scene. And I was like, I don't really want to get back into that grind of like every week playing the church gigs, trying to get on the call list for the jazz gigs and the recording sessions. And it seemed like, well, it's going to take me like 6 months to a year to get back where I was before
Right.
this gig I had. So why don't I just try to start a business? So for me, it was the opposite. It was like, I'm just going to start a business, try
Mm,
to do a day job that allows me to have the freedom to play, but I can have some steady income. And so I bought some drum parts, put together a couple snare drums, loved the process. And then from there, it was just off to the races. I've always been a cymbal freak ever since I was like 13, 14 years old.
mm,
But I just never knew that cymbals, you could make cymbals. I thought it was like there was this mystical art form, mystical craft that I had no connection to. But
mm.
drums, I found a website that was like, here you can DIY a drum set, just buy the shells, buy the hardware, put it together. And so I did that and really liked that. Did that for a number of years. Started making percussion stuff, which got me working with bronze and metal, which was the impetus for cymbal making. And now most of what I do is symbols.
Yeah. Yeah, and you seem to be doing pretty well with it. So, yeah, I mean, I'd say to people who come to me, you've sort of become the face of it, I'd say. And if you're not comfortable with me saying that, then I can put it a different way. But I did a post on my Patreon recently, I know we talked about, and it's what I said there is true that a lot of people who come to me, maybe for modifications, more and more, as the craft becomes more and more visible, and sort of the curtains being pulled back on it a bit, which is something you and I both talk about a lot. And there's a little, the way we're putting it is kind of spiciness about actually revealing what we're doing as well. But that's for
Yeah,
another time.
yeah,
But what I do get quite a lot in my modification requests of more and more specific things, and basically I blame you because
yeah, yeah. It's my
you,
fault. I know.
yeah,
Or
you've
partially
got
my fault.
well, yeah, and whatever. Of course, everyone's sort of cool when I say, well, what you've seen might be part of the story, and maybe there's more to
Right,
it. And if you haven't watched
right.
all of Tim's video, you know what I'm getting at there. But
Yeah.
it's just kind of interesting, and that's, I think, another thing. So we'll get into the discussion properly, and I'll start the timer, which should pop up on the screen in a second. And with all these things in mind, let's talk about the business side of things. So we've both given our unique angle on it, and of course, everyone has their own, and there's a million different ways. It could be an accidental thing, it could be a planned business that went a different way, or whatever. And there's a constant review as well, right? So one thing I do get a lot from people, like I said, is how do I set up business? Where do I begin? And let me just pepper in a few things before we begin. One of which is to kind of maybe kick a few things off, rightly or wrongly, the idea that you can just grab a hammer and some old cymbal and go bang, this looks great, Instagram, and then expect a kind of tumble of influence and followers and all this. Now that, of course, is changing as the craft is changing. So that's just a little seed for something. What I'm going to do is hit start on the timer, and really, I'm just, as soon as I go 3, 2, 1, start, I'm going to throw over to you, and whatever's on your head, we'll just pick up. We got 20 minutes, and we'll stop at the end of 20.
Yeah.
Okay, good to go.
Amazing.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
So yeah,
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Over to you.
All right. So first thing that comes to my mind is it's way harder than you think it is. Even if you think it's hard, it's probably twice as hard as you think it is.
Hmm.
And it's kind of that thing where, both of us might be able to say, I won't speak for you, but for me, I could
Sure.
go back and if I could time travel to 2014, 2015 and say, kind of tell Tim what it's like, um,
Yeah.
would I have still done it? I think I would have, but I got into it with so many assumptions about
Right.
what it's like. And just like anything in life, you have to wade through a lot of difficulty and wade through a lot of drudgery to get to the gem, the core of the thing that you really love or that you're really interested and passionate in.
Mm.
And for me, I mean, I probably modified 50 symbols plus 100 symbols maybe before I ever even offered it as like a service for people. I just had friends coming to me, or
Yeah.
I worked on my own symbols to try to figure out what was happening if I hammered here versus hammering there versus top bottom blah blah blah. I was just experimenting, and it was just a curiosity thing for me. I said that I started out with like I want to start a business, then I bought snare drum parts, but really it was the reverse. I bought the parts because it was like I always wanted to build a drum, and the
Mm.
second I built that first drum, it was like I want to do this. This is
Mm.
what I the fact it was more the love of
Yeah.
making something with my hands that
Yeah.
then it was like the second thought was, okay, well if I do this for a business, it allows me to keep doing the thing, which is
Right.
really what I. And so I guess sometimes I can wonder if people kind of get the cart before the horse and think, oh, the business, I'm going to have the business, this is going to be my job. And then they
Mm.
kind of back up to, okay, now I'm going to learn the craft and how does this work? How do I do this? And then they're kind of maybe not coming at it from a place of genuine interest in the thing itself.
Mm.
It's more the idea that you don't have to work an office job. You can do something for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
So I mean, for me, I've always said that curiosity and passion has to be kind of your driver.
Yeah.
And core of what you do. Because my example for this is that I didn't have enough curiosity and passion about drumming to really reach my potential there. I didn't have whatever that thing is that some people tend to have, where it's like they're just
Mm,
insatiably curious about how something works and they have to
hmm.
know and they have to explore and figure it out. I never had that with drums. I feel like I'm a competent drummer. I can play gigs, I can play different styles, whatever. But as far as me reaching like a maximum potential level, I didn't have that. I didn't know that until I started making cymbals because it was like
Right.
I was just so curious about how it all worked that I had to figure it out, no matter the cost. No
Yeah.
matter how many blanks I ruined or symbols I destroyed or how much money I had to pay to just be able to do it without even selling. Like that. I think that to me is kind of the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about like the business side of this
Mm,
industry and the music. If you're interested in it, it's like maybe think about what your priorities are. Maybe
mm.
I don't know. I don't want to come across teachy, but like that's for me at
Sure.
least. That's sort of how I conceptualize it.
Yeah, I think it's fair enough because you certainly have a number of years under your belt to be able to at least offer an insight. And, quite rightly, you're not saying do it this way because that's what works.
Right.
That you might see me scribbling away just a few things. You've said like mystique and assumptions and passion and all these things. And it's the same, the similarity with us, I think, one of many is that it was a passion and a kind of intrigue for me as well. I guess I didn't realize it was a passion, and I'm still not sure if it is in a way, but like it's just an intrigue that I have to follow, and the business has kind of, again, for which I'm very grateful, kind of come with
Yeah.
that because I
Thrown
guess
around
I've
it.
yeah, because partly because it's had to, and maybe subconsciously even I've sort of led myself to this point, but also because I think if anyone does something with enough integrity and just blind devotion, I suppose, possibly at your own expense, then others take notice. But that's all of this stuff we're talking about is so kind of ripe for extra discussion. So I'm going to try and keep us in a certain
Yeah.
kind of channel. What I will say at this point is anyone watching, if you want Tim or myself or both of us to expand on any, I mean, again, like you said,
Yeah.
I can't
No,
talk for
yeah.
you, but if anyone wants us to expand on this stuff, we can figure out getting some essays or videos or whatever, tutorials, online one-to-ones, because we're just going to skip through a lot of things, I think.
Yeah.
So yes, the business thing. So one thing you said was about people maybe getting the idea of the business first. And you were quite careful about how you said it, I think, and rightly so, because to my mind, I guess you don't really get into cymbal making unless you're somehow attracted to it for reasons you might not even understand. So I guess there is a kind of primary passion thing, but then there's also, you had a business. I was lucky enough in my position where I could afford to tinker and find these things out, difficult though it's been. But there are many people who do work the 9 to 5 drudgery and are seriously sick of it and potentially see a way out. So it's very natural to go, oh, I can learn about this and potentially earn a crust. How do I do that quickly? So I completely get it.
Uh,
But I
yes.
guess partly what I wanted to talk to you about was realism, I guess, without bursting bubbles,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
which,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
That's up.
inherently talking about like bursting bubbles makes it sound like there's a kind of negative, and it's just the
Yeah.
challenges thereof. But therein. But you and I have talked about cymbal making itself. It can be the most crushing thing in the world and the most
Yeah.
elating thing in the world. And I think that the business comes hand in hand. So let's
Yeah.
get back to that. Let's talk about, for example, let's take the example of someone who sees someone online doing it. And of course, there's more and more people doing it, which means it's more and
Yeah.
more visible. There's, of course, other issues with that, but we'll get to that
Yeah.
some other time, health and safety and stuff. But for anyone who sort of watches one of your videos, one of my videos, Manny Screeter's doing his thing, Nicky Moon showing his workshop, anyone
Yes.
showing anything, it's very easy for someone to go, cool, I like the idea of that, and I'd encourage that. Get a cymbal, get a hammer, set up Instagram. Why am I not living off it yet?
Right, right.
And I'm not necessarily saying that does happen, but let's just take that extreme example. What do you think about that? Potentially, even with some advice, be big-headed about it or whatever. Go for it.
Yeah, I would say first thing that comes to my mind, you said don't burst bubbles.
Sure,
And maybe this is going to seem like I'm trying to burst bubbles, but I'll get around to maybe a way of conceptualizing it. But
sure,
basically, what I learned, I was fortunate enough to have I kind of worked on the side with my dad at the time that I started my drum business. My dad and I entered a business arrangement where he would be like a capital investor for me and help
right,
me by like giving me some funding. So it was basically the same as if I had gone to a bank
hmm
and gotten a loan. Um, and what ended up happening for me at least, and this is kind of the dose of reality about this kind of thing, is that it costs many, many, many thousands of dollars just to start.
yeah,
If you're kind of coming at it that way, you might have other circumstances that allow you to work, and it's a little bit cheaper. The barrier to entry is a little less. Um, but I mean, I had to, obviously it was a loan. It wasn't just he didn't give me the money. I paid it back every penny, but it
hmm
was tens of thousands of dollars just in the first years just to get the tooling, just to buy the parts and experiment and ruin a bunch of those parts, throw those parts away, start over again,
absolutely, yeah,
different skill. So the investment side, the upfront investment, the barrier to entry kind of cost is actually very high in this area. I mean, you can do way if you're handy and you can do things yourself, build things yourself, build a lathe yourself,
yep,
make the
yep,
frame out of wood or whatever. You
hmm
can drive that cost down, but it still ends up being pretty hefty. So, um,
yeah,
kind of know that going into it, and you save up money, and you kind of know that there's going to be an upfront cost that then you're thinking about in the coming years. You slowly make that back, and you slowly get to a point where you start
mm,
making profit. This idea that we can
mm,
just start this and be making profit, it doesn't really exist. I didn't turn a profit for the first 5 years of making drums,
yeah,
which it coincided with me making the percussion accessories because that had this higher profit margin, and I could do most of the work with my hands and turn stuff around, and there was a higher profit margin there. So that was where I started to make the transition. When I was just doing drums, it was like a total loss. I wasn't making any money, and I was hustling
yeah,
and gigging on the side, doing like 4 or 5 side jobs.
yeah,
My business didn't really become my full-time thing until I'd been doing it for 5 plus years.
yeah,
Uh, become a thing where I was able to do it and support my family on it.
right,
And so it's kind of in a way similar to the music thing where it's you got to hustle and have a lot of little side jobs and make
mm,
your money kind of cobble a living together.
yeah,
But I always go back to this advice I heard from someone, a friend of mine who played with this artist that would tour, and they were talking about music, and the guy had asked him like, "Well, how do you make it in the music industry?" And I think this applies big time. The guy's advice was really straightforward. He just said, "Do it for 10 years."
yeah. I remember you telling me this. Yeah, we
And that
talked
was
about
it.
it.
I always
Yeah,
thought about that. It's like, okay, do it for
yeah,
10 years. There's a lot in that.
sure.
If you unpick it, there's a lot in that. Really do it for 10 years, like commit fully to it for 10 years. And
hmm
then you'll just kind of wake up one day and realize, oh, I'm making a living doing this. Wow, cool. But
Yeah,
the investment was like a decade of your life or however many years of your life.
yeah,
And so alongside of that, there's also just all of the extra stuff that comes along with running a business that you don't factor in when you start. Like you've got to all of a sudden be your own marketing team, and you've got to make your own videos and edit your own videos. You've got to
hmm
put yourself on social media and be consistent on Instagram. Things that just feel like soul sucking and soul crushing to you, but
yeah,
no one's going to know if you don't do that. You've also got to think, well, what sets me apart from the rest of the crowd and what everybody else is doing? If you just do the same thing everybody's doing, then you're not really going to break out
yeah.
and kind of stand on your own and get noticed. And you have to start thinking about all these things, but you're like, well, I got into this because I love cymbals and I just want to learn about cymbals and learn how to make them and be good at making a,
Mm,
it's like,
mhm.
how do you brand that cymbal? What name do you put on that cymbal?
Oh,
How
yeah.
how do you market it? How do you play it in your demo? Oh, you have
Oh,
to
yeah.
do demos. You have to do like have a video and do a demo and then edit that and then post it and then pricing and then it just kind of like it builds and builds and builds. And for me, I've come to that place of realizing that like about 70 to 80% of what I do, I don't enjoy it. I
Yeah.
don't love it. But then I get to do that like small percentage of the stuff and that kind
Mm.
of like tides me over and helps me stomach the other 70% of things that are difficult about running a business.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. It very much kind of takes you away, and there's so much in that. So again, I've been scribbling. I think the thing about the barrier to entry, for example, part a little kickback on that could be from my perspective. It depends how you do it and what you're going for. But I guess the point is that it's constantly shifting and things are piling on top, which is exactly your point. So to take another example, one thing I like to say when people approach me about starting cymbal making is you don't necessarily have to get the world's best cymbal lathe and all this and all that and then start
Yeah,
learning on it. Your tools and your environment, as long as you're safe, they can develop with you. The
that's a great
problem,
point. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's how I did things. So the problem with that, sorry, I've just had a pop up which I need to get rid of. Okay, I just had a little pause because something came up on my screen and threw me off. But basically, my thing is like if you're gonna take the advice, perhaps let's just put it very binary and say that I say to someone, you don't need all this stuff. Just pick up a hammer and start making mistakes. The thing is, then you've got to realize it's a long game. That idea of 10 years, for example, just gives the idea of the scale. It doesn't have to be precise. Or you could kit out a workshop, spend tens of thousands, and then start learning. Regardless, you've got that amount of learning and work to do. One isn't better than the other,
Yes.
but the scale is important. So what I find happening a lot is people do go onto Instagram, pick up hammers and go, I'm doing this. And then suddenly the actual depth of the thing comes along, especially if they're making promises to other people. There's been a few people who've been
Yes.
like, I'm up, I'm doing this. I don't really know what I'm doing. Join me on my journey. Fine. And then it develops as it goes. But part of the realism, I think, is, again, without wanting to burst bubbles, and maybe they need bursting in some cases, is just be prepared for it because you've got to learn the craft anyway in order to become
Yeah.
even vaguely successful in the sense that people will trust you to make cymbals. And then are you making in batches? Are you making in volume? Are you doing one-offs? Are you then just doing these gnarly things because you don't know what you're doing and there's this hidden mystique? All this stuff. So that's the kind of realism I'm talking
Yeah.
about. 20 minutes is not going to be enough for this. So I'll throw it back to you
No,
on that
no.
on that one.
What you said that does add important context to it. When I say the thing about 10,000 or thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, I started Symbol Make. You can just start.
Of course, yeah. And I
You don't
didn't,
need to like,
yeah,
yeah,
I wasn't suggesting you'd kind
yeah.
of said otherwise, but yeah,
Well,
definitely.
it reminded me though that like when I first took a hammer to a cymbal,
Mm.
my roommate at the time had a barbell that I just flipped up on
Hmm.
its end as my
Yeah,
anvil,
yeah,
and I went to Lowe's and I bought a $15 peen hammer.
yep,
And then I just started swinging on a cymbal I
yep.
already owned that I didn't like. And actually still have that cymbal. It's like buried somewhere over there.
Cool.
And that was the thing that got me started and was the cool kind of spark of like, oh, this is possible to change the sound of the cymbal, like drastically change the sound by just hammer it a few times here, hammer it a few times there,
Mm.
and then testing and all that. And what happens is the shop can grow around you, like you said. Like
Yeah,
I started there, and then it was
yeah, yeah,
like, what if I had a really good anvil? So I went and bought a steel block basically and ground it into a shape where I could hammer the top of the cymbal. Because before I
mm.
had gotten like a jeweler's anvil that was like a square, like yay big and
Yeah.
really shallow, and I just put it in a little wood frame. But I could only really hammer the bottom of a cymbal. I
Right.
did that
Yeah.
for a while. And then it was like,
Interesting.
well, what if I have one where I can actually hammer the top easily, without mishits all the time. So I did that, and then from there I did a bunch of modifications just that way, just the hammering, then it was like the dream was like, what if I had a lathe? And then I did it the wrong way that no one should ever do it, where you just like take a wood lathe, you don't know what you're doing, you slap a backing on it and you just turn it on and
Mm,
it's going 1750 RPMs and you're trying to lay the cymbal. It's like I'm amazed. It's a miracle I didn't like really hurt myself.
yeah,
Um and then from there I kind of grow and realize, oh, okay, there's like a safety element. Okay, I've got to do this very right. I've got to be super careful. Even if I have a safe machine, I can still kill myself doing this thing. And then you grow into it, and as you're doing little jobs here, you're getting some money. You invest that money in more blanks, or you invest that money in your machinery, and it can grow that way. But like you said, it's this just understanding that there's a very large process to
mm,
having an established business. For me, it's taken 10 years, basically. I feel
yeah,
like
yeah,
right now, I mean, I'm almost at 11 years since I started my company. I can say, like, within the last year, I have had moments of going, okay, I have a business. It's actually working. I'm
yeah,
providing for my family.
yeah.
It took that long for me. It might be faster for other people. It might take longer for other people. It really is like dependent on the person. But
I find that in the making as well. So, like, I've talked to you about this at length, I expect, but every so often I'll just go, "Oh, wait, I know, I kind of get it," in maybe a new way in terms of like how to make the things. But the more of those I have, the more I realized how far apart they are. Like, same, I'd say it's literally a decade or so of maybe two or three moments, possibly a few more, going, "Oh, I get it." But it is that long game. So if you're like, I want to quit my job and have a business now, chances are, sadly, it's not really gonna happen that way. If it does, great. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but then you're starting to think, well, if you're a business, you've got to offer something that's instantly consumable. So that means probably like ranges of cymbals. Then you've got to learn how to make the same cymbal close enough several times. And that is a whole can of worms. So we are sort of counting down the clock here quite quickly. And we're going to run out of time. Plus, my Zoom subscription as well is no longer the pro subscription. So
it's a
you
good
said
teaser,
about
though.
John.
Good teaser.
It's a good teaser, and
Yeah,
I'm basically just going to talk for the next 3 seconds, two, one, and we are out of time.
done.
So, what I'm going to say, how would you feel about another 20? Honestly, if you're busy, don't worry. I can send
Yeah,
you
that's
another
good.
link. Yeah?
Let's do it.